We heard the president's plan, 5,000 this summer, 10,000 by the end of this year, a full 33,000 by the summer of 2012. On that schedule, is it workable? What's good about this and what doesn't work? What do you see here?
It's problematic for those who have felt there's some logic to the existing strategy and campaign plan. Now, there is a lot about what the president's proposing that builds on what he's been doing. He retains twice as many forces, even at the end of this process, as he inherited when he became president. It becomes a reasonably large, comprehensive coalition in the sense that even with only 68,000 Americans, the Afghan troop numbers should be up around 350,000 by then. And so there's a lot that's continuous. On the other hand, commanders had certainly expected to be able to swing forces into the east of the country next year, where they consider us to be presently underinvested. Remember, it was that area that did not get the forces General McChrystal had requested, because McChrystal did not get the full suite of 40,000. By the way, today's the one-year anniversary of his firing, another interesting milestone. But there were 10,000 forces that he had requested and did not get. He asked for 40,000, he got 30,000. The missing piece would have gone to the east. So the plan had been to swing to the east as we made progress in Kandahar and Helmand. That will no longer be possible in the way that was intended. And on top of that, we may have to thin out in Kandahar and Helmand faster than commanders would feel comfortable, and before Afghans themselves are fully tested in the job of taking the responsibility for us. So it's a very risky strategy if you believe in more or less the concept that's been behind the McChrystal, Petraeus, Obama strategy the last 2 years.
In fact, the Afghan National Intelligence Estimate that came out earlier this year, AP just put out this story, and I want to get your reaction. It says that this analysis concluded that U.S. Special Operations raids and Special Operations-led outreach to Afghan villages are producing tangible results, but that larger counterinsurgency projects, like the billions of dollars spent to install a credible Afghan government, are lagging. This is what the report says. What's your reaction?
Well, there's no doubt that our development effort in Afghanistan has been very difficult. And frankly, on this point, President Karzai has had some reason to criticize us. You know, he points out that some of the corruption is not just the friends of Karzai stealing money, it's also our pumping more money into the system than it can handle in ways that we don't properly control. So there's no doubt that our development projects have been too disconnected, too unregulated. On the other hand, a lot of them are doing a good job. There are a lot more schools open than ever before, a lot more health clinics. The ring road in Afghanistan is almost completed, and we're getting money to the local villages in a direct cash transfer way, which the Afghan government can essentially take ownership of, and that gives local villages the opportunity to prioritize their own development needs. So basically, it's a mixed bag on the development front, but on balance, I think the corruption is weighing down the whole thing in an unfortunate way, and a little less money, frankly, would probably be beneficial, would probably be a better answer, because then we could be a little bit more discriminating in how we spent it.
We've been fighting broader. We've had the surge, 30-some-odd thousand troops, additional troops came in the last couple of years, okay? We've been fighting broader, but now we're drawing down. So now, instead of broader, we're entering a phase where we're going to have to fight smarter, okay? How would you fight smarter? What elements get emphasized as forces get smaller? Where do you concentrate your efforts? What do you do here?
First, I'd say we're already fighting smarter. One of the things about McChrystal and Petraeus is they both did a lot of things to change the way we operated. They put a lot more emphasis on reducing the use of firepower in situations where we didn't know who we were going to hit. They put a lot more emphasis on working with Afghan forces in the field, which is crucial because obviously that's the ticket home ultimately. So more of an apprenticeship effort in the field, not just a few weeks of training and then wish them well on their own. So I don't know that there's an opportunity to quote-unquote fight smarter than we've been fighting. I mean, we got Petraeus and McChrystal, two of our best commanders in a very long time, having designed and implemented the plan that we've been using. So I don't think there's great opportunity to fight smarter. Having said all of that, we have made progress, and the President was correct that we're 100,000 more Afghan forces sort of into the future than we had been when he announced this strategy back in late 2009. And therefore, they can do more of the fighting. Now, just how much more is the question. And I think the pace that the President's now envisioning for handing off responsibility to them is probably too fast, frankly. It's a very risky approach. There's a chance it'll work, but that's where we have to sort of cross our fingers.
I want to go back to the I want to go back to the Afghan NIE. The report, which covers the final quarter of 2010, says that the Osama bin Laden-style night raids, combined with special operations, village-by-village security operations, have shown more lasting progress in degrading the Taliban and its influence than attempts by conventional military forces to drive out militants. That's what I meant about fighting smarter. Do we concentrate more on special ops at this point and these other things? What do we do?
Special ops sound like a panacea. That's what we tried to do for the first 5-6 years of the war. We were basically focused on Operation Enduring Freedom, which was not part of the NATO coalition, not part of the ISAF NATO peacekeeping effort. It was its own independent means of gathering intelligence and going off and trying to strike at bad guys. There are a few problems, though, when you try to do that in isolation. First of all, if you don't know the country, you wind up having one tribal leader come over and whisper to you and say, that guy's a Taliban, when in fact he's just a rival of the first guy. So you get bad intelligence because you don't know the area, you don't operate in the area. Secondly, your friendlies, your informants, people who are collaborating with the government and with NATO, get killed off because you don't have enough security to help protect them. So they get assassinated by the Taliban. So the whole notion that you can get the intelligence needed to do these surgical strikes has already been disproven by recent history. It's not really a theoretical debate anymore. We tried it, it didn't work. And so I think the notion of going primarily to counterterrorism doesn't work. Now, can you change the mix, or can you hope to go to counterterrorism in the future as the Afghans get the capability to provide that human intelligence and that population protection? Yes, but the pace matters a lot, and it's got to be part of a careful plan. What the president essentially did yesterday was to throw away the existing plan in the hope that commanders can make a new one based on this much more rapid drawdown. And I wish him well, I wish us all well, but it's going to be risky.
Is such a plan possible to fabricate? Can you forge a new way to go here?
Yeah, what you can do is you can basically say we're going to move out faster in the south and the southwest than we had previously intended, and keep our fingers crossed that the Afghan army and police can do the job as we leave. And then we're not going to reinforce in the east substantially in the hope that special forces and other means can handle that, or that the Afghan army and police will gradually grow and be able to do it with time. It's not a crazy strategy. On the other hand, in the east, we have seen the results of not moving in with adequate resources. The results are continued violence from all these networks like the Haqqanis, who have continued to be a huge thorn in our side. And what commanders would love to do is go clear out their sanctuaries, and now they're not going to have the forces to do that.
This is a NATO operation in Afghanistan, okay? Sarkozy has already announced that French troops, the 4,000 French troops, are going to be drawn down on a similar parallel schedule to the American troops. David Cameron today said that British troops will remain as conditions permit, but he also said 450 Brits are going to be leaving this summer. So how does Obama's announcement and his strategy here affect the NATO coalition and its operations in Afghanistan?
I think on balance it does give a little bit of aid and comfort to those who would want to draw down themselves for domestic political reasons of their own. In other words, the president could have said, the drawdown is within sight, but we're not quite there yet. We can do a little drawdown this year, but we're basically going to have to wait until the end of next year's fighting season, and then we can really accelerate. And if he had projected that resolute image, it would have marginally changed the debates in Europe and also with the Pakistanis, who doubt whether we're really committed to this. But by emphasizing his desire to come home, he may have addressed some of his own domestic political concerns in the United States, but he made some of these issues of coalition management a little bit more complicated, and he made it easier for not just French and British, but potentially Pakistanis to say, you know what, we're not going to have quite as much faith in this mission or quite as much commitment to it ourselves. The French and the British drawdowns we can probably live with, frankly. The Pakistani reaction is more worrisome because they already doubt whether we are committed to this. And with the president emphasizing nation building at home, the Pakistanis are going to hear, in many cases, the foreshadowing of another precipitous American drawdown, which they think is sort of our standard MO. And they've been waiting to see validation of that theory all along. So I'm a little worried for that reason. Again, the president's leaving a lot of forces. Let's not overstate. And for any Pakistani listeners to this program, 68,000 U.S. troops at the end of 2012 is still a pretty substantial number. So I think some of these rumors and theories are incorrect. And American commitment really is reasonably good. But unfortunately, conspiracy theories being what they are, we may have to worry about the president feeding into them a bit with his speech yesterday.